This is Jamey from Stillmeyer Games, and today I'm going to be talking about my favorite mechanism in Long Shot, the dice game. I played this with only 2 total players recently and really enjoyed it. I think it's great, or will be great, at higher player counts as well. It plays up to 8 players. I think this would make a wonderful game for a big game night. Long Shot, the dice game is essentially Downforce. It's very similar to Downforce, a racing game. Competitive racing game, but involving horses, where you are kind of betting on horses and doing some other things as well to either cross the finish line first if you have bet on a horse or you have bought a certain horse, but ultimately just trying to have the most money at the end of the game. And it's a lot of fun. It has that kind of camel up Downforce feel of rooting for different horses, even though you may not really control those horses at all. I have a few different mechanisms to mention, but and I'll show you the player mat. Each player has one of these player mats that you're using. One of my favorite mechanisms, I won't go too deep into it, but I love this little bingo mini game. Each turn in Long Shot, you're going to be rolling a couple dice to determine which horse will move and how far it will move. And say the number 7 horse is rolled. You can use that 7 in a couple different ways on this mat, and one of the ways is to cross off the 7 on this bingo chart. And if you, like in bingo, if you get a full row or column crossed off here, then you get a reward down below. Just a fun little mini game. I like the idea of a bingo mini game. We need more bingo, I think, in tabletop games. But my favorite, and my other favorite mechanism, my number kind of honorable mention here before I get to my top one, is that you can buy the horses and that you don't start off owning a horse. This is really clever. This is different than Downforce, where you start out the game with a specific car or specific cars if you're playing with fewer than 6 players. But in this game, there are a bunch of cards. You can see there's a ton of them here representing different horses. Like you'll play with 1 per color, but you can see there are multiples for each color. So you're choosing 1 per color. These are all the horses, and you don't own them at the beginning of the game. But during the game, if it's your turn, you can buy a horse. Or even if it's not your turn, you can buy a horse if you're the first player to act. I think that's really cool. You can take ownership of a horse during the race, which is different than real life. It doesn't work thematically, but I love that this choice happens during the race itself and not beforehand. And I love the asymmetry of the different abilities on the horses. Each one has, that's why they're different. They each have their own little ability here. My number 1 favorite mechanism, though, is also tied to these cards. And that is, again, similar to Downforce a little bit, that whenever a horse is rolled, so I'll pull the die here to show you. So whenever the number 1 horse, for example, so if number 1 is rolled, we're going to move the number 1 horse. Whenever it's rolled, a number of other horses move as well. So in addition to number 1 moving, all horses that have a crossed off number down here also move 1 space. You can see number 1 starts off with the 6th horse, at least this card does, the 6th horse already crossed off. This isn't me writing on this card. This is pre-crossed off on this card. So at the very beginning of the game, if the number 1 horse moves, the number 6 horse also moves 1 space. And the coolest thing, I think this is so cool, is that during the game, one of the choices you can make is to cross off additional numbers here. And so say I'm betting on the 1 horse. I'm hoping the 1 horse does well. But I also have placed a few bets on the 2 and 3 horses. I might try to cross off the 2 and the 3 on this card so that whenever the number 1 horse moves, so do those horses. They move as well. So it's a really nice sense of progression throughout the game. I love progression in games. This is a really, really clever way of adding it. Yeah, I just thought that was brilliant when I heard that you kind of all, it happens. It works for all players too. So even though I've crossed off the 2 or the 3 on this card, I might end up helping other players too, and we're kind of rooting on these horses together, which adds to the experience of a horse racing game. I had one other thing. What did I want to add? I think that might have been it. Oh yeah, the other thing was just a clever choice in the game. There is no spatial element. Again, comparing this to Downforce, I think both games could belong in any collection. They're both really, really great racing games. But there's no spatial element as to like which horse moves into which slot of the track. There's just a track. They're going around in a circle, and there's just 1 space, 2 spaces. I'll show you on the board. So I kind of like that decision of addition via subtraction on this track, where you're not jockeying for like the inside position or anything like that. And I would bet you anything that the designers considered that while designing it and then removed it because they found that it was more fun. And in this case, not in Downforce's case, I like that they have the spatial element, but I like that it's removed here. You don't really need that extra element of complexity for this game. So yeah, this is Long Shot, the dice game. I really enjoyed my first play. I look forward to playing in a larger group, and I'd love to hear what you think about these mechanisms in the comments below. Thanks.